Moving on to Resolution 23 on the BBC Charter Review, can I call Doug Thomson to move, to be seconded by Linda Fabiani, MSP. Please welcome Doug Thomson.
Thank you, Derek. Morning conference. I'm Doug Thomson from Edinburgh Unity, the Southside branch. And as you can hear, my voice isn't that great today, so sorry about that, but I blame Derek for too many late nights during conference. So anyway, let's progress. The BBC lies at the heart of so much of civic life, both in the UK and here too in Scotland. However, in recent times, the BEEB has lost its way. We have devolved assemblies governing successfully in the 3 Celtic nations, but we have in the BBC an institution with a structure, governance and commitment to regional programming, which has remained London-centric, metropolitan and lacking in the accountability to the people of Scotland that successful institutions must have in a post-devolution world. Conference. This is a BBC that is no longer fit for purpose. Yeah. The Westminster Government has launched its much anticipated Charter Review process, eagerly anticipated by Tory politicians, but dreaded by those of us with a passion for high quality, relevant broadcasting in its many forms. Dreaded because cuts and restructuring, and that's what this review will entail after all, will fall disproportionately on the regions, and we in Scotland are at risk of seeing a diminished BBC. A diminished BBC where there should be a huge appetite for quality output from what should at least theoretically be a trusted, impartial, world-leading public service broadcaster. But conference, we've been here before. The first SNP Scottish Government established its own Broadcasting Commission in 2007 and produced its final report the following year. The report was received with cross-party support here in Scotland, but fell on deaf ears amongst the executives at the BBC in London. The report's conclusions were relatively straightforward, however, that there was little reflection of the particular needs of Scottish audiences, governance and accountability were lagging way behind the expectations of 21st century civic Scotland, and of course that age-old gripe that Scotland was funding the BBC but was receiving back less than its fair share. And where have we had that before? 7 years on, with the BBC having done little to reflect the true broadcasting needs of the regions, the findings of the Commission are more relevant than ever. So the UK Culture Secretary has set up an expert group to advise on the next BBC Charter Review. Not one, not a single member of that group can be seen to have any connections with Scotland, nor be considered to be seen to be championing further devolution of funding and programme making from London to Scotland. So who's going to put forward Scotland's case with regard to the future of the BBC? Well, nobody on this highly influential expert group. So conference, today we call on the UK Culture Secretary, John Whittingdale, to personally intervene and include regional representation and in particular with Scottish expertise. Now, going back to that age-old gripe I mentioned, we currently raise around £320 million, believe it or not, through the licence fee here in Scotland. But according to the BBC's own figures, less than £200 million is directly spent here in Scotland. Now that really is unjustifiable. So if Whittingdale won't include Scottish representation on his advisory group, he can instead focus his generosity on reversing that funding mismatch. And that lies at the heart of our own Broadcasting Commission report, that the BBC isn't broken, but it isn't fit for purpose though, and instead needs to be rehabilitated and made relevant to the dynamic world that modern-day Scotland has become. Now, of course, something else happened after the Broadcasting Commission. We had a referendum, we didn't win, but the Scottish The Smith Commission was set up with the promise of devolving substantial new powers to the people of Scotland. Well, not in broadcasting, it's not. Not in the accountability of the BBC, and not in giving the Scottish Parliament responsibility for media regulation, and not in enshrining further programme making in Scotland. No, instead, the Smith Commission, now called the Scotland Bill, offered a consultative role to both the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government in the BBC Charter review process. And that was it. Quite simply, not nearly good enough. No conference. It's time for Scotland to have full control over broadcasting. First...
He's giving the button.
The First Minister in the summer called for the BBC to adopt a federal structure as part of the review process, with each country having their own BBC board and having members on the UK board. But with the responsibility for culture and press regulation already devolved to Holyrood, there is little logic in not affording the Scottish Parliament full responsibility for broadcasting. It's only with such a radical shift that we can have the focus, commitment and investment to ensure that once again the BBC as a Scottish institution becomes one that we can be universally proud of. Conference, support the resolution. Thank you.